Hi everyone, welcome to Webinar 2, Deep Dive into Planning, Facilitating, and Evaluating from the Community Engagement Almanac developed by TYTHEdesign in partnership with the Bureau of Harlem Neighborhood Health, a part of the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. TYTHEdesign provides social impact strategies that help build the capacity of government, nonprofits, and foundations to foster healthy communities and resilient cities. Today, we are going to dig deep into how to use the Community Engagement Almanac for planning, evaluating, and facilitating engagements. Ideally, this toolkit is for someone working in and with communities. This could be in the role of government, community-based organizations, advocacy, or as a volunteer. This tool is designed to be approached in three main ways: for planning, skill building, and inspiration. This webinar is going to focus on planning and skill building. While we're going to walk through the Almanac in order, remember that all sections stand alone. We encourage you to take the pieces together for full effect. Each part has value for your team, no matter your capacity. If you're looking for more of an overview of the Almanac as a whole, review our first webinar in the series, How to Use the Community Engagement Almanac. Today, we'll begin by walking you through the purpose and planning tool to help you start building new work processes into your practice. By establishing a process for planning engagement, you can work more efficiently with your team members. We'll also be showing you how you can focus on skill building for yourself and your team using 3 of our mini guides. The mini guide for planning engagement will build your capacity to identify your purpose, establish your agenda, and plan for a productive and inclusive environment. The mini guide for engagement evaluation reminds you why evaluation is an essential component of any engagement. And finally, like a workshop on the page, the mini guide for facilitation provides a crash course on the roles and responsibilities of a strong facilitator and strategies for supporting productive dialogue. Engagement helps us improve the chances for long-term impact in our communities, and we hope developing an understanding of how to use these tools will build out your arsenal to provide meaningful experiences. We encourage you to jump ahead to the section you're most interested in. The goal in offering a webinar series about this tool is to make it work for you. Part 1. How to use the Almanac for planning. Front-loading any engagement process is an essential component of its success. We want to be proactive in devising an engagement, not reactive, and that requires planning. A strong facilitator is a planned facilitator. Use the Community Engagement Almanac to start a conversation with your team about your priorities. Frame your discussions, find alignment, and build team capacity. The first tool and assessment you'll find in the Almanac is the Purpose and Planning tool, How to Plan a Community Engagement. In it, you'll find an overview for setting intentions and goals for an engagement, anticipating outputs, and preparing for your stakeholders. A community engagement experience can be crafted in a number of styles, depending on your goals and context. This tool provides a framework that guides you and your team through a series of targeted questions. Part 1. Find your purpose. Start with defining the why of your engagement. It's important that your team is in alignment on the purpose of the engagement and why it's an important part of their work. We encourage you to stay high level here, rather than getting bogged down in specifics. Think about the intent of your engagement and key aspects like who are your stakeholders, also known as the people you want to invite, your targeted participants. How will you engage with the community, and so on. Don't worry about having all the answers. You'll get into the nitty-gritty in later sections. Set goals. These questions ask you to consider what the expectations are for your stakeholders and to start thinking about how you will evaluate the effectiveness of your engagement. Define outputs. You'll find questions like, what will you and your stakeholders walk away with? And what are the tangible outcomes you hope to achieve? Determine stakeholders. Reviewing with your team what your stakeholders' perception of your organization might be and what barriers might exist in engaging them allows you to uncover how much you actually know about your stakeholders. Assess capacity. This might just be the most practical part of the tool, where you and your team assess your abilities and access to the resources you will need to actually produce this engagement. Consider, what resources do you have at your disposal? This section gives you some resource options you may be planning to access and some you may not even have considered. The planning tool should get your whole team on the same page and ready to start planning your engagement. If you're using these tools in order, then your next step would be to complete the Equity and Inclusion Assessment. For more on that, tune in to Webinar 3. Part 2, How to Use the Almanac for Skill Building. If you're looking for a way to support new staff members, refresh your own skills, or get on the same page as your team, the 3 mini guides we'll be focusing on in this webinar can get you there. Each one includes best practices and helpful information, and you can use the checklists at the end of each guide to track your process and help you understand if you're missing something or need a better strategy. We'll start, where else? The mini guide for planning engagements. Similar to the purpose and planning tool, we ask that you start with building skills around identifying your engagement's purpose. This includes providing you with guidance on developing goals, outputs, an evaluation framework, and an understanding of your stakeholders. The guide will help you build an agenda, plan a safe, inclusive environment, and engage your stakeholders in meaningful experiences by incorporating participatory decision-making techniques and utilizing arts and culture and engagement. This introduces the idea that the incorporation of arts and culture allows for dynamic possibilities when it comes to sharing and belonging. In addition to supporting the process for community engagement, outcomes also support long-term community building. Why include arts and culture? Well, it can increase attendance and participation, set the tone, find commonalities, and bolster relationship building. Among the best practices you'll find in this section are building in time for social networking and remembering that no matter what format you're using, you'll always want to kick things off with warm-up activities. They can get everyone feeling comfortable with one another and with you as the facilitator. But be careful to avoid using the word icebreakers unless you want folks flashing back to awkward encounters at camp. But above all else, remember your project goals and be flexible. Part 3, How to Use the Almanac for Skill Building. The mini guide for engagement evaluation. Remember, you don't have to go in this order just because we are. Evaluation is a powerful tool to support community engagement. Tracking engagement supports your ability to increase capacity, influence policy, secure funding, and understand your community's interests through their participation. It's important to consider evaluation from the beginning of your planning process and incorporate opportunities to evaluate throughout. You're likely already doing some sort of tracking, monitoring, and evaluation work, so this mini guide helps build on that existing foundation. You probably already use a tool like Eventbrite for your engagement registration. And you can add a survey question to gather additional information. Research and evaluation doesn't have to be formal. Simply observing what's happening in your initiative and jotting it down is evaluation. There is no one right approach to evaluation. Instead, it's conducted based on an organization's capacity and in alignment with the project's purpose. Why evaluate? Because it's a powerful tool for making intentional and impactful adjustments to your work. It's also useful for understanding your team's capacity and ability to produce effective community engagement. Evaluating your engagement isn't just about how many people show up. There are other measures you can use to determine if your goals were met. We walk you through the key aspects of building an evaluation framework, determining why you are evaluating, who is involved, and what to evaluate: demographics, impact, team capacity. In fact, there are many tips to adjust what you are already doing to support evaluation, like adding that survey to your registration form and taking those notes at team meetings. This mini guide even comes with its very own catalog of ideas to support your data collection efforts, complete with links to resources like articles and guides to things like wording surveys to get the information you want, or questioning that leads to meaningful interviews. Some best practices for utilizing engagement evaluation include planning who is responsible for collecting, analyzing, and reporting the evaluation results, and choosing the right method for sharing those results. Different stakeholders benefit from different mediums. For example, a follow-up email with evaluation results shared with the community can help build transparency, while an internally circulated report helps build institutional knowledge. Identify early on how evaluation will be used and by whom for the most impact. Evaluation in the Field with Christina Nieves of the Bureau of Harlem Neighborhood Health, a part of the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene.
I'm Christina Nieves. I'm the Community Research and Evaluation Specialist at the Harlem Bureau of Neighborhood Health in the Center for Health Equity and Community Wellness, which is a division of the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene in New York City. Why an evaluation? We see it as an essential part of programming and our initiatives. And so it's really important for us to learn about our programs, what's working and what's not, and how we can improve. Why are we conducting an evaluation? What are we hoping to learn? There may be a long list in response to that. So for example, we might be interested in evaluating whether or not we achieved our stated goals around engagement. Did we engage the number of partners that we had hoped to? Did we engage the type of partners that we had hoped to? So we begin by asking ourselves what it is we hope to learn from an evaluation. And in thinking about that question, we also need to think about how we'll use that information. Do we want to be able to use the information we learn from an evaluation to leverage future opportunities? Or do we want to use this information to improve upon our work? Understanding the why, though, of evaluation is really key because it's really easy to get lost in the weeds of information and data, and it can be very overwhelming. So I find it helps when everyone on the team is on the same page about what they're hoping to accomplish with an evaluation and how they're going to use that data. With one project in particular, we conducted an evaluation to assess our community engagement strategies that we use when engaging with our partners for a project. We had specific strategies and values that we wanted to uphold in our work. And we wanted to assess the type of engagement that we did with this project. We used our community engagement framework to guide this evaluation. And in that framework, it categorizes types of engagement, such as outreach or consulting or collaboration or shared leadership, and describe some of the values to doing community engagement in an equitable way. You can use the community engagement framework to plan your engagement work. So you can identify values that you want to uphold. You might also want to identify different types of engagement that you hope to do in your work. And then you can use that when you evaluate as well to see if the engagement strategies that you had implemented and hoped to implement in your plan, if you actually did that and were able to achieve that. Being able to use an existing framework can be really helpful in guiding your evaluation of engagement. In thinking about some evaluation support that I provided for organizations in the community, there was one organization that had received a small grant from us, and they hadn't done any evaluation work on their project. They didn't have a ton of experience doing evaluation and were kind of intimidated by that process. They had a priority geographic area that they were hoping to reach in terms of engagement. We talked about what they were already collecting. We found out they were using a simple sign-in sheet to track the names of their participants and the number of participants they were engaging. And so she expanded that sign-in sheet to collect additional information, for example, what zip codes people were coming from. And that was key information for her because that helped her learn about who she was reaching with the program and who she was not able to reach with the program. One piece of advice, if you are creating an evaluation framework for an engagement, is to start small. Collecting data and evaluation data could be really overwhelming. So I think it's helpful to focus on a few aspects of engagement that you're looking to evaluate. What questions are you trying to answer with your evaluation that would be most useful for you? And then what kind of data do you need to answer those questions? So for example, one place to potentially start is, who did we engage with? How would we describe that engagement? And did we engage with the people or sectors or types of organizations that we had hoped we would? Focusing on those simple questions could be a really great place to start.
Part 4. How to use the Almanac for skill building. The mini guide for facilitation. Facilitation is the practice of guiding a dialogue or engagement towards desired goals. Facilitators help provide the space for stakeholders to share, listen to one another, and exchange ideas. The mini guide for facilitation reminds us that facilitators need to be skilled in helping a group stay on track, participate, and feel heard by maintaining neutrality that guarantees a smooth and equitable process. The guide kicks off with some reminders for facilitators during tough times. Embrace emotions, acknowledge challenges, and recognize that everyone is feeling pain. The roles and responsibilities of the facilitator include planning the experience, keeping the agenda and everyone on time, and setting the tone, expectations, and community agreements, which we go into detail about in this section. Like a how-to guide for managing group dynamics, the next section of the mini guide for facilitation presents strategies for supporting productive dialogue. When a group can come together and explore ideas, discuss strategies, and make decisions collaboratively, you know you have a successful engagement. Productive dialogue helps to minimize unwanted power dynamics and provides a space where everyone feels welcomed and voices are equally heard. It helps to increase participation and supports a group to arrive at a mutually beneficial plan of action. Understanding where your stakeholders are coming from is a really important job of the facilitator. Additional best practices for facilitation that you'll find in the guide include using active listening skills to note how stakeholders receive and respond to information. If you notice that some stakeholders are not contributing as much as others, find appropriate ways to include them. Most importantly, be aware of your airtime, the time you spend talking. Quick tip, the 80-20 rule, you should talk no more than 20% and the attendees the rest. Remember to solicit opportunities for feedback and maintain transparency and flexibility with stakeholders in order to honor their voices and contributions. We also recommend reviewing the Equity and Inclusion Assessment and tuning in to Webinar 3 for a deep dive into the mini guide for anti-impression, inclusion, and accessibility. We encourage you to explore this toolkit and take advantage of all of its unique components. We also offer sections of the Almanac in Spanish. Review our first webinar in the series, How to Use the Community Engagement Almanac, for more of an overview of the whole toolkit, and check back in for our future Almanac webinars for deep dives into anti-oppression, inclusion, and accessibility, and community engagement formats. You'll hear from more community members who share their experiences from the field. Until then, thank you for joining us for this Community Engagement Almanac webinar.